Hi everyone, I'm Mike Ford. I'm the founder of SiteMinder, and I'm bringing you this week's roundup of our World Hotel Index, where we look at booking trends in hotels around the world. For the first time since mid-March, hotel bookings globally rose to above 55% of last year's levels. That happened on the 6th of September. Unfortunately, they dropped back to 54.7% just 3 days later. And that brings us to the 10th week where hotel bookings have actually remained in the sort of plateaued stage of global recovery. So we saw dramatic rises up to nearly the 55% level, and then we've seen a flattening of recovery, but it has maintained a plateau. So we're not seeing a massive fall off, but we're not seeing further growth towards equaling last year's bookings. Momentum at a global level may have stalled overall, but there are certainly certain trends that are continuing. The last minute booking trend is that we've been reporting since June certainly hasn't stalled. It continues in markets all around the world, including Cambodia, where an incredible 4 out of 5 hotel bookings made in the last 2 weeks are actually for stays in September. So people are booking really short windows in advance of their stay. One trend is bucking the last minute booking trend though, and that's the growth of Christmas and New Year's Eve hotel bookings. So people are clearly keen to get out and usher in the 2021 year in a more positive way. We can see a clear spike in multiple countries, including Australia, New Zealand, the Pacific, Barbados, Canada, the Americas and Philippines, and also Vietnam and Asia. In Europe, we are seeing a similar pattern emerging. Just 2 weeks after the summer end, we're already starting to see spikes in bookings for summer months next year. So again, it's about people thinking positively and making sure that they can get away and get some leisure time. So in the Nordic nations of Denmark, Finland, Norway, and Portugal and Italy, we're seeing that. It's clear COVID hasn't completely deterred plans for enjoying the beach weather, and international travelers have been behind half of the bookings made within most of those countries over the past month. So more international flavour to those bookings than the pure domestic short-term bookings we've been seeing. So the question is, could we be learning to live with COVID? I mean, perhaps in Europe we are, because in spite of outbreaks across the continent, hotel bookings have still continued to climb. For example, in Germany, where we see 65.5% year-over-year bookings taking place. There's also been a marked destabilization lately brought on by second waves. So Spain, France, and then the UK are all experiencing second wave phenomena where there's a lot of destabilization and new restrictions coming back in, etc. But the interesting thing is, as opposed to the drastic dip we saw in March, we're actually seeing less of an impact this time. So, for example, 2 cities within the UK that are actually back to pre-pandemic levels are Brighton and Bournemouth. They're both 2 hours drive from London city centre. They're both leisure and beach destinations. We do, however, see a bit of a different picture in Asia Pacific, where government restrictions have remained quite strict and steadfast and held back movement in many countries, whereas there's been more free movement in Europe up to now. Singapore, which has struggled to rise above 20% of last year's booking levels, is the latest market to actually incentivize domestic travel with a staycation stimulus. So you're seeing governments focusing, rather than on inbound international travel, on domestic tourism and actually incentivizing people to take domestic holidays. Same thing in Thailand, where they're introducing government funding for local holiday stays. They're also introducing a special tourist visa scheme that appeals only to foreigners who are willing to stay a minimum of 90 days. So it's a long-term stay. The cautious measures could be working, with Asia sort of contributing 3 out of our 5 fastest rises in the past month. So we've got Vietnam, which has gone from 9.85% year-over-year to 25% year-over-year, and Philippines, which has gone from 6% to 14.24%. So they're 2 of our fastest rises. Other fast rises are Barbados, South Africa, which has now hit 65% of year-over-year bookings, which is quite astounding given the sort of the outbreak of second wave there. And then we've got Sri Lanka as well, coming in at 31.52% of year-over-year bookings, up from 20.58% year-over-year a month ago. So the question is, will 2021 bring the change that we're all hoping for? Obviously, only time will tell. But in the meantime, what we can see is COVID is creating a world that's operating at two speeds. You've got your faster and more internationally focused opening strategies, like some of the places in Europe we've talked about. You've also got a slightly more constrained and domestically focused, slower approach to recovery in some of the Asia Pacific countries that we've talked about. So while the approaches are very different, both these different speeds and different approaches are really, the attempt is the same, which is to engineer to find a balance and a normalcy, where there is none in a bit of a crazy world. So I hope you've enjoyed this update. Please browse around the World Hotel Index if you haven't already, and have a look at what's going on. But we'll catch you on our next update. Thank you.